chance of failure was so much lower because of the way that it was designed. So I had to, probably very similar to most people going through this journey, I disbelieved something and then believed it stronger and stronger and stronger by trying to kill it. Instead of just standing in a space of disbelief, I tried to where were the vulnerabilities, and through that process, became more and more convinced that this was. I don't even, when I think about Bitcoin, instead of saying Bitcoin first, I say an open, decentralized, and secure protocol bounded by energy. Because the thing bounded by energy will tell you the truth, and the thing bounded by pieces of paper will not, right? And so that's how I think about this process, and then I think about all of the risks and the centralization and what that looks like, and then through that process, as I came to realize, I realized we were the risk. And the greater we, because we give our attention to the world that many of the people who are listening to your podcast aren't just starting their journey, right? So they would be deeper. But when you really understand what that means, you're not going to stop, right? You're going to do everything to move there. And I realize that two things can be true for people at the same time. If you're measuring the world from the piece of paper and you think Bitcoin's going up, that would look true to you, and you would reinforce your belief, and you'd take leverage against that, and it'd be just but that would be a centralizing function, because the system has to centralize, because it's against the natural order of things, with the free market being deflationary. But I understand that can be true from a perspective of people wanting Bitcoin to go up versus their piece of paper. But my perspective is also true, right? And my perspective, people are asking, when does it happen? Well, it's happening, right? My house has fallen from 300 Bitcoin to 22 Bitcoin in the last 4 years. And then next 4 years, it probably falls to 2 Bitcoin. So every single thing is being repriced by Bitcoin. And people are asking, when is it going to happen? So now how do you beat that rate? I've done a lot of thinking on the only possible way to beat that rate is to invest in companies and protocols on top of that are aggregating Bitcoin on their balance sheet by providing value to this expanding protocol and network. And so the companies that are providing value on that is how you beat that rate. You're building Bitcoin balance sheets from building it onto this new protocol.
So you're talking about how when you're thinking about making investments in this space, there's the paper hurdle rate of, outpacing inflation, but really we've got
production, and a wallet that means has to be free. And because it's just the technology around that wallet, and so many people will create wallets of all millions of different variations, which is very good for all human beings to be able to have lots of choice, but it's really bad as an investment philosophy, right? So a calculator app I use every day is very good for me, but not a very good investment. So similar. So you have to understand which are the types of investments that could outperform. They outperform by essentially building the rails to be able to make this simpler and easier for billions of people to move on. And what I think, if it's capturing what before we had the technical outage, but if it isn't, I'll say it again. You're actually bending reality to the vision of the future that you have by creating a pathway at 3 cents, maybe 2 cents at the next cycle. You're going to be killed, right? And you might not be killed if there's no other miners and everybody goes broke before you, but you can't count on that. So what does that mean for really great miners? The operation of a miner has to be exactly counter-cyclical. You have to sell when everybody's buying, and you have to buy when everybody's selling. And because it's opposite to the incentives, because most people can't do that, because when everybody's buying, especially in a public case, those companies are rewarded for their future growth. you better keep growing at this rate, and they're buying too, right? So it's so having an operator that thinks like that, uh, it just doesn't happen very often in markets being countered, because essentially what it says is you're going to have to leave some money at the top to be able to watch the froth and then collect it as it's going down the bottom to be able to make the next top, right? And that's a really hard. Everything went broke, but there was a time that they were worth billions and billions of dollars of value, and the amount of money that was flowing into them for the lay of the broadband on the growth rate of the internet. But everybody did the same thing, so you do this massive overcapacity, everybody goes broke. So what's happening in AI right now? And now, if you talk about AI, prices fall to the marginal cost of production. What's the cost of a line of code created by other lines of code? Zero. So how do you make money from it? And so if you're paying that money for the mass of money going into AI that you can't make money from, or you certainly can't make the money based on energy costs on where they're going now and what ends up happening, then that whole thing in time, I can't tell you when, but it explodes, because you have this overcapacity creating more energy, but it's creating the economic incentive to build more energy, and it's global.
So in your view, if we said that our stated company mission was to lower the cost of energy for all the consumers in the Pacific Northwest, would you say that that is aligned with developing more Bitcoin mining?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. So what you're doing is, and that's why when you look at energy policies today, they're so outrageous. And when you look at the centralization or the green initiatives, and the thing that creates the scarcity creates the abundance and solved by the free market, because there's more resources, and the only thing that stops that is regulation to protect the monopoly. There is no such thing as a monopoly in a free market. So when people are looking at the giant food companies and pharma companies that are polluting their food to make them sick, and those are all and they're all regulated monopolies, that all of the money funded to do that is from the same regulation designed to scare you. And no wonder you have kind of 5 different companies controlling the world in all of these places. Now, who do you think the politicians are elected by? And who do you think the CDC it gets? And where do you think the funding comes from for the research studies that you're reading to say that's and as you understand Bitcoin, as you're going down the rabbit hole and you put it all together, it's almost like a check valve. You can't go back. Then you go deeper and you can't go back. Then you go deeper and you can't go. But once you're now inside this new system and measuring from this new system, all of the things from the old system make perfect sense, as do all the things in the new system. So what attracts me to what makes those Bitcoin entrepreneurs different, and what makes kind of that, not just the entrepreneurs, but all the teams that are joining those teams, they know full well that their actions matter, and they know that their time matters in creating abundance for everyone. They can do really well. They can do extraordinarily well by creating valuable services for other people. But in service of that, it works in the free market, and so they're all so what you see is for you, and you could play this whole thing, but eventually one day that's going to not work, and all prices are falling relative to Bitcoin. So I'm in the camp of all prices are falling relative to Bitcoin, and we're investing in the companies that are building the rails to make that easier.
So a good example of this would be when we were in Portland, you had me open up an actual Fediment where we could join. And this is a layer 2 on Bitcoin where you can transfer value essentially with the same cost or even lower cost than a Lightning channel between 2 people. Yeah. So what
that means is you get hundreds and then thousands of then millions of these federations. And the scalability comes from the interoperability of all of these, and it becomes more and more secure. What's the risk? You're in one federation, a massive federation, that 5 people decide to fractionalize your Bitcoin, and you have all your money there. That would be a really big risk. So what do you do as a user of this? You either set your own up with your friends, or you set them up with people that you don't know that can't do that, or you set it, or you're in 5 federations, and every suffices a store of value. And Bitcoin Cash with block size and the whole block size war, through the people that thought that, would have been also right. But what they didn't see is protocols come in layers, and by being right and being used as a currency, it would have centralized and failed. So it wasn't that they weren't right, and that it needed to be a currency. It was the way it would be a currency. And you could say the same thing about different tokens that were private. They were right in, if Bitcoin didn't achieve that through a different layer, like Fediment in this example, then there's a risk that governments would try to find tinkering, there'd be changes. But in that view, if everything fell to its marginal cost of production or utility value, this gets almost philosophical, but it also, so if you said today, we've always lived in an extractive economy, and that extractive economy, we think we're winning within it because we're winning relative to other people that are losing more, right? So if you hold assets and somebody doesn't hold assets, the inflation is wage deflation. Your money isn't getting devalued as fast as theirs, and you're gaining at their loss. And if you extract that around the world, move out of Canada and US and Europe, which are closer to that system, how fast would the productivity rate actually increase in a true free market, where each person could contribute their time and energy to something that was in service of all of us? Because we've never found something other than the free market that allows you to trade with somebody that you don't like, that benefits them and you. So Bitcoin imposes this, and it doesn't care if you believe it in it or not. It imposes this. You should care. But it imposes, what's happening is, through Bitcoin, that connectivity, that network, that the network right now is a broken network based on extraction. And Bitcoin changes that network, but you matter. Every single one of us matters, and you can actually you don't have to wait for somebody to tell you when to do this and when to start spending your time. And if you're spending 2% of your time now and it's starting to feel better than this extractive world, spend 4% of your time and it'll feel better again. And whatever amount, and if you don't want to, don't do it. And nobody's going to judge you for it. But you booth at EgoDeath.capital, but EgoDeath is the kind of, and if you're an entrepreneur looking for capital in it, I can't say if it's going to be for sure, but we'll look at everything. And if we don't invest, we'll happily point you to somebody who might. And if you're capital looking to get into this, yeah, the EgoDeath is probably the best